Good evening, YouTube family. It's your favorite black guy from Nebraska. Yes, there are plenty of melanated people here in Nebraska. Yesterday, I got halfway through this video and my memory got cut short. Yeah, that's one thing I hate about these iPhones, man. You could not know when your memory is full or your memory is close to being, depleted, and right in the middle of you doing something important, the video shut off on you. So that's what happened yesterday. Today we're going to talk about the end of black rule in Europe. Okay, we're in this book, When the World Was Black: The Untold History of the World's First Civilizations, Part 2. Now, one thing I will say about this book is that a lot of the sources that are used are not black sources. Their sources in this book are often those of the opposite race that are telling what they've found, what they've discovered. Going over all the information here is being quoted, what you will call quote unquote white sources, Indo-European sources. So this is not all about quote unquote Afrocentrism. Simply, it is truth being uncovered. That's simply what it is. So if this is not something that you're really interested in, please move over to another page. Please patronize another YouTube channel. But if you're here to learn, no matter what the color of your skin is, hey man, this is great history. And I feel as though there's enough of information that needs to be uncovered where I can devote it specifically to this. You know what I mean? This is just something I'm great at. I'm good at. This is kind of like my niche somewhat. I know the videos aren't the best, but the information is wonderful, makes up for everything. So we're going to go ahead and read the part of this chapter called The End of Black Europe, because of course there was a beginning and we're going to talk about the end. What happened to the black people of ancient Europe? What do you think? They were killed off, but not right away. It literally took thousands of years. Between 3500 and 500 BC, massive hordes of Caucasians swept through all of Europe, effectively eliminating many of the old populations who stood in their way. But some went into hiding, while others put up a fierce resistance. Some remained elite, even after their kin in other nations were brutally cut down. This was especially the case in areas where blacks had settled in large numbers, like Spain and the British Isles. For example, archaeologists recently unearthed the grave of an African woman in Yorkshire, England. And if you guys have been on my channel for a while, you know I got information about the Moors of Yorkshire, England. Named the Ivory Bangle Lady. Her stone coffin dates back to the 4th century, a time historians have assumed that African immigrants in Roman Britain were of low status, male, and likely to have been slaves. Instead, the Ivory Bangle Lady was an elite, buried with a wealth of valuable items, including a bone placard that reads, "Hail, sister, may you live in God." You know that had to come from black folks. What happened to people like her from the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century and the beginning of the Renaissance around the 14th century? The black people of Europe endured a slow genocide, and emphasis on slow. If you read on our history in this country, you will think that, the end of our rule occurred quickly, but it did not. They will have you believe that everything that occurred to us, all the atrocities that occurred to us, happened quickly, and it happened within the span of 100 to 200 years. Well, that is a lie. When you dig into history, real history, you'll find that these things took time. It is no coincidence that the gradual persecution, demonization, eventual elimination of the original black people of Europe went hand in hand with the campaign to suppress and expel the Moors who had conquered Europe. In fact, the despised Moorish occupation may have prompted Europeans to target all black people, whether Moorish or indigenous. Even after the Moors were forced out of Europe in 1492, small pockets of black people, some Moorish, some Anu, some Aboriginal, remained in Europe. These people became the targets of a widespread publicity campaign that sought to associate blackness with evil, just like they do now. In fact, as we'll explore in Volume 5, The hunting of witches, now this is very important. Listen to this. The hunting of witches in Europe from about 1480 to 1750 was based on the elimination of black women and those who continued to preserve the traditions of black Europeans. We were the black magic they hunted and killed off. Of course, wars are never fought on only the field. There were certain incidents where Europe's blacks were killed en masse or hunted down individually, but much of their disappearance is due to the process of amalgamation or race mixing. British scholar David McRitchie has provided us extensive documentation of this ancient black presence in his works. In volume 2 of Ancient and Modern Britons, in which I have both books, he presents his take on Europe's early race wars. In most of the examples cited, of whatever nature, the two great types, black and white, appear as enemies, which was their natural attitude. And a great number of the legendary instances preserve the memory of this mutual enmity. Natural enmity, huh? That's deep. McRitchie continues describing a time when blacks ruled over whites. The black giants of the Welsh and other tales are hateful and horrid. The Welsh black oppressor and the Black Knight of Lancashire are fierce tyrants, the cruel foes of all white people. At a later date, when the whites were gaining the ascendancy and the blacks were cut up into straggling bands or lurking, like the Black Moral of Galloway, in solitary dens in four shades, out of which they issued by night, intent on murder and raping. Even at this stage of their history, the blacks were the dreaded enemies of the whites. Indeed, it is of this epoch that the popular imagination has most retained the impression. The days of the black oppression are so remote that their memory only lives in half-forgotten legends. Not so the time when the black castles were owned by another race, and their former masters were skulking among woods and caves. In other words, these black rulers eventually found themselves broken up and outcasted. The stories of the times that followed are the ones that were survived best in popular myths and legends of dark demons, trolls, and boogeymen. So vivid was the fear of them and so lasting its impression. The children of the 19th century, peering into dark recesses, timorously, or peasant girls, seeing sadly their own image, reflected by the candle from the dark window pane, shiver all over with apprehension at this vision of the dreaded black man, a mere imaginary bugbear to them, but a real terror to those from whom they inherited the feeling. But this state of things could not last forever. No two races, however antagonistic, could inhabit the same territory for countless generations without amalgamating. Such a thing is an impossibility. Whether in an authorized fashion or not, a mixed race eventually comes into being. And this is what we see in our own history, long ages ago, and in spite of a gradually dwindling party of irreconcilables, the great two sections may be seen uniting here and there. McRitchie explains that this amalgamation of enemies eventually produced large numbers of Europeans who looked white but had a black ancestor, a situation that was common in the U.S. when he wrote. But just as our hypothetical octoroon family on the other side of the Atlantic might forever after continue to intermarry only with their white kindred, so that our British octoroons have done likewise, with the result in either case that their far down posterity of the Negro or Moor would be so white that no ethnologist could detect the presence of any other blood. And yet, in both cases, the male descendants would bear the surname first given to their remote authors, a surname signifying the black man. This multifaceted war against Europe's black roots was not limited to the British Isles. Such genocide campaigns went on throughout all of Europe and extended well beyond its borders. If you consider what all of the earliest expeditions out of freshly liberated Spain and Portugal accomplished in the Americas, Asia, Africa, and Oceania, centuries later, few blacks survived in Europe, with the exception of oppressed minority groups. The Jews had brought the Negroes into the Rhineland with the clear aim of ruining the hated white race by the necessarily resulting bastardization. That's a quote by Adolf Hitler, Mein Kampf. Thus, it's no surprise that Adolf Hitler, before beginning his campaign against the J people, who even among the Ashkenazi Jays carry a significant amount of African DNA, sterilized and tortured thousands of black Germans. Tortured thousands of black Germans. Ironically enough, Hitler himself had the same African DNA he sought to eliminate. Did you know? David McRitchie writes, but the traces of our black ancestry are visibly existent in 100 surnames. Some of these denote complexion, others do so, but indirectly. The first class includes a great many. There are the clans Rory and Dougal, spelled Dubgale or black strangers, in their own genealogy. There are all the varieties of Dub black, such as Duff, Dow, and McDuff, and others. There are Dons, Cars, and Darks, with their equivalent Duns, Browns, Grays, and Blacks. All these are color names showing a black or tawny ancestor. So also is the name of Douglas or Douglas, literally black swarthy, and that of Moray, with its kindred forms of more or more. Very interesting. We're going to read this last little bit of information right here, and we're going to call it a day. Black genes in Europe. Despite centuries of mixture, more of the above is confirmed by genetics. For example, the African haplogroup L is rare in Europe. With the exception of Spain and Portugal, frequencies as high as 22% in some regions of Italy, but among these are lineages. What we find interesting. According to a 2012 study, about 65% of these African lineages came within the last 2,000 years, particularly during the Moorish conquest, but also during Roman rule and much later because of the slave trade. But about 35% of these African lineages form the basis of prehistoric European bloodlines, going back at least 11,000 years ago. And long before the Moors, African lineages from the E1, B1, B1, BY DNA subclade entered Europe from Northwest Africa via Spain. African lineages also show up in Eastern Europe, particularly around the Caucasus, beginning around 6,500 years ago. These were the Anu people we described as guard communities in Volume 4. Very, very interesting information, great information, a lot of information that you can take out of here, guys, commit to memory, and also research more on. This book is amazing. The sources are here. The information is here. But you know what? Like I said, man, don't believe everything I say. Vet the information. You know what I mean? So, like I said, When the World Was Black, The Untold History of the World's First Civilizations, Part 2, Ancient Civilizations. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to be dropping more content. It's your favorite melanated brother from Nebraska. I'm out. Peace. Good night. And God bless.